totally played this game where instead of doing my missions, I've just gone and gunned down random people.
Nice.
Just
Mm-hmm. In the video game, not in real life. In the video game, in Minecraft, in Rogue Squadron.
In Rogue Squadron.
Yeah. To be clear, I've never.
We'll start to use in Rogue Squadron instead of in Minecraft.
All right.
Yeah, that'll totally throw them off.
Okay, N64. Thank you, Sam, in the chat right there.
Yeah, it looks like there was some Star Wars game that my brother and I had on GameCube that was just like the best. And then we lost the memory card for our GameCube, so we could only ever play like one level of each game. Yeah, it was tough.
Yeah, that ain't
hard times.
All the Star Wars games that I really grew up on were Super Nintendo for the most part. Although I did have an N64 too. But I played a lot more Super Nintendo.
James, what's your relationship to Star Wars? Is it are you like everyone has a complicated relationship with Star Wars. What's yours?
Well, my mother got me into Star Wars when I was very little. She indoctrinated me into Star Wars fandom. You know? Having me watch the movies. When the prequels came out, she took me opening night to go see those. Also took me to go see the sequels when they came out too. Me and my mother went. So I mean, it's been a very Star Warsy childhood. I had all the Star Wars, played a lot of Star Wars action figures. Those were a lot of my toys. Love Star Wars. Been a big fan of all. I'm unlike a lot of Star Wars fans where they hate certain ones. I don't hate any of them.
The only one I've ever ended up not really liking was the most recent episode 9.
See,
I still love it as an individual movie. I think it falls flat as any sort of wrap up for either that trilogy or as any sort of tie-in for the rest of it. Like, I kind of like the Palpatine thing, but even that only made sense if you fucking watched a clip from Fortnite and like, or read the novelization. Like,
yeah.
Well, yeah, because in the novelization, didn't they? They said that Palpatine spoke to Rey when she like first used the Force when facing up against Kylo Ren or something like that. That Palpatine's voice was there, or I forget if that was like in the movie and the like someone I forget where I saw that. I never read the novelization and I can't really recall exactly, but I think it's perfect that she was a Palpatine, and I wish they would have foreshadowed it more. You gotta have for one. You have to have
what
Palpatine
do you mean
back.
Foreshadowing? Like, they didn't have a damn plan. They made it up as they went along each movie.
But it had to be Palpatine. They ended up with the correct, thing at the end of the day.
Like, and that is the best part. But like, we did not get any real fucking like conclusion to like any real satisfactory wrap up or expansion on Finn's like background as a stormtrooper, like, or reconciliation with the fact that he left being a stormtrooper because he saw some of his friends get killed, and then he starts cheering on killing his friends later. It's very weird.
That's all they have to do. All they have to do, and they can do this, and this is the same thing they had to do with the prequels to make the prequels awesome. Because now I believe the prequels are awesome. I will fight anybody about that. But it required the Clone Wars.
Still trash acting on Hayden Christensen's part, but it's a great story.
It required the Clone Wars.
Yeah.
Right. So when you watch the prequels, including the Clone Wars, it turns it from what it was when it first came out into an amazing story, because there was a lot of character development that happened during the Clone Wars that you see Anakin one day, and then all of a sudden dark side Anakin's like, where'd that come from? And so you needed the Clone Wars in there to show that character development of the Anakin character. So all they need to do is tap Dave Filoni and say, Dave Filoni, do another animated series that takes place in between the sequel movies. Boom, done. Problem solved, and it'll be awesome.
They could have actually just expanded on like episode 8 stuff, though, because there was so much good ripe shit. They actually really discussed slavery a lot more. Like that, you went into some great Jedi takes, like all kinds of stuff, and also the fact that we actually like diagnosed space capitalism as like the actual cause of all the problems, like the actual funders of both sides of the Star Wars. We could have actually seen them. We could have actually seen them end the Star Wars as we know it. Doesn't mean that other battles wouldn't or doesn't mean that other fringe groups wouldn't pop up, but they would have way less funding if they took down that space capitalist planet. And it would be interesting to see how the Star Wars change without capitalism influencing it in that way.
Yeah, but they could take all that and expand on it in animated series, and it could be awesome because there is a lot in there that can be expanded on, which is what's good about it. Which is the same thing that was good about the prequels, is they gave a lot of material for more content to be created around it. Because I mean, the Star Wars universe is huge, and it can't really be contained and accurately done in a few movies. There's a whole lot of stuff that's going on with everything. There's always a whole lot of stuff, and it always has required the expanded universe stuff to really get into the details. And the animated series have always been great. Anytime they put Dave Filoni in charge of anything, it's awesome. Fucking love the Clone Wars. Oh god.
Yeah, no, I love all this shit. Like, I feel like part of the fun of Star Wars is that there's so much going on that you can always sort of insert yourself anywhere. There's so many different stories to be had. But I also want to defend the Phantom Menace. When that came out, that was fun. I had so much fun with that.
Oh yeah, same.
It was new. Yeah. It was different. And it was doing things that.
And I love Jar Jar. Fight me. Anybody can fight me on that.
Well, I'm going to also defend episode 2, because a lot of like the political stuff they got into set the course for a lot of really great stuff that they were able to do within the Clone Wars series. And I liked seeing all the Senate stuff. I liked all that stuff. That was cool. That stuff's all really cool that they got into all that kind of, all the political stuff in episode 2 was in there, and that stuff's cool.
I still loved like when Rogue One came out and Disney's trying to be like, oh, these movies have nothing to do with fascism or anti-fascism or anything. And then I remember like the official Rogue One account posted the rebel symbol with a safety pin through it. And that was like a, response to Disney saying it wasn't an anti-fascist film. And it's like, of course it is. Like, George Lucas said that the Empire, while being the Nazis, was also based off the American Empire. And that the Ewoks were the Viet Cong. Like, he was very explicit about that in a number of interviews. And it's wild to try and take the anti-fascist politics out of it, and even the anti-war politics out of it. And I think stories like Rogue One and Last Jedi really pay respect to that legacy more than anything else. And Rogue One was just fantastic, and I love that they studied World War II movies in order to come up with the style for it. That was a really cool idea.
It was a really great movie.
It's the only one that felt like a true war movie with weight in that way, rather than just a fantasy story, like a science fantasy story.
It was definitely more of a war movie.
But I think what Rogue One did so well is that it got into some of the more complicated stuff about how the rebellion worked. Like, what is the right way to rebel? What is the effective way and ethical way to take down the system of power. And yeah, that's what really resonated with me, is just like having even that level of discourse in a Star Wars movie. It's really cool.
I mean, Star Wars is a great like narrative tool for it, just like explaining imperial politics. To be like, look, to say that we are like the bad guys is not to say that you are like individually bad. Like individual members of the empire are not like fundamentally evil if you're just living in the empire, but also like we are the
Luke
empire.
was going to join the empire, the imperial army or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like in the first movie, like, or in the fourth movie.
Yeah, that's what he wanted to do. That was his goal, right?
Yeah, that was he was originally going to go into the military, and he had no politics or stake in that game until Obi-Wan convinced him otherwise.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You know, exactly. Like you don't have, not everyone has to be Darth Vader for this to be the empire. You know?
I would watch that movie though.
You'd watch a movie
Honestly,
with Darth Vader?
Just a bunch of Darth Vaders just chilling, just doing whatever they do, you know?
Like the you know, the old insane asylums where they locked all the people who thought they were Napoleon in one room. It'd be like that with Darth Vader.
A movie focusing on just bad guys would be what I always wanted them to do, and I really hope Disney somehow steals this idea, so I'm throwing it out there every time, is we need a Darth Maul movie or Darth Maul show that that
everybody loves Maul.
Everybody loves Maul.
No.
And that takes him from where we saw him in Solo to where we saw him again in Rebels.
Honestly, that Solo cameo was cool as shit in many ways, but also very confusing and had nothing to do with the story.
Well, yeah, because he had taken control of all the criminal stuff.
Well, yeah, but I mean, like, it just, I don't know. It felt like they were just trying to force a cameo in there, is what I mean.
Well, I mean, you got to get Ray Park in the Maul uniform again.
And don't get me wrong. I think the fan service is really sometimes the way to go.
That was my fan service in that movie.
Yeah.
And I feel like the animated series, like the Clone Wars, are these fantastic moments to see, like, what does the Star Wars universe look like when it's not from the main character's perspective all the time? Because very much, I mean, Star Wars is rooted in the kind of like James Campbell, you know, hero narrative. And that's awesome because you get like these amazing characters like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. But I loved the stories in Clone Wars that were just about like random clones and stuff. And like, I feel like a Clone Wars type thing for the latest Star Wars movies would be an amazing opportunity to once be like, this is this huge universe and there's everyone's experiencing all these political moments in different ways, and and in like what is, because there's no way that all this, just like Duel of Fates like basically explains, is there's no way every stormtrooper is just like, way to go, we're going, because they're not the clones anymore. They aren't just like the soldiers with the chips in their brain. They're people, And so I think it would be amazing.
Well, I'm gonna stop you right there. The clones were very much people, and they were very much had their own personalities and their own thoughts.
Well, but we're not dealing with clone troopers anymore. We're dealing with stormtroopers.
Yeah, I mean post order execute order 66.
I think that actually the clone troopers probably had more uniqueness than we ever saw out of stormtroopers.
Yeah,
but we've also spent more time with them than we ever have stormtroopers.
One thing I really would have loved to see in the Book of Boba Fett, though, is that I don't know if you've read the Vader comics at all. But,
I need to.
In the Vader comics, part of it is Vader goes back to Tatooine and just starts hacking down Tusken Raiders. Just goes in there and starts killing them. And then there was like one survivor of this, and he went on to go tell another Tusken Raider tribe about this, and they ended up like
not calling him the Essler.
And then he ended up they erected they worship Vader as a god after this. And I really would have loved if like that tribe was in there and Boba Fett like sees them worshiping this giant Vader effigy, and he's like, "Hey, I know that guy." Like, I would have loved that so much, and I really wish they would have done that. And I really hope they still have it. I mean, they still have time. You know, we still got Mandalorian, and I'm sure that's going to bring us back to Tatooine with Boba. So they still have time to do that. I really, really hope they do, because I think that would be just absolutely amazing to see Boba's reaction to seeing them, you know, his tribe now worshiping his former boss.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is what I was saying about Jar Jar, like that willingness to be goofy, whether it's stuff like this or, you know, Skywalker milking the whatever those animals are.
Oh yeah, no, that was so
animals.
good. And honestly, like, who the fuck? Speaking of Jar Jar being goofy, he was literally modeled after Goofy to a certain extent.
Oh,
Like,
really?
That was an actual inspiration for him, and he was meant to be comic relief, and he's fucking hilarious.
Well, it was
And,
the same
like,
thing with C-3PO.
Yeah, people complained about the Ewoks for being too, you know, too childish, and it's like, it's a kids movie. Did you remember that? Like, yes, we're getting bigger stories that are like more mature and shit out of it, absolutely. But first and foremost, this was the movie you brought your kids to. It was a fucking serialized like pulp drama or pulp science fantasy, like action, you know, thriller, like whatever. Like, it's not. It's got princesses and a, you know, like, and a character named Skywalker and his, you know, Biggs Darklighter. Like, come on, like, there's not genius shit there. And everybody that called Jar Jar racist, the actor that played him felt really fucking offended that that was everybody's take, because he poured his culture into that. That was not George. That was not George Lucas. That was actually him helping have input on that character. Like, Lucas isn't perfect in the way that he borrows from other cultures, but he does sometimes do it with the help of other people who are trying to collaborate too. So, like, and that was definitely the case where that dude was adding his accent, like his native accent and things like that, to the character. And yeah, those ears do kind of look like dreadlocks, and that's kind of purposeful. Like, it's cool. Like, that makes it that much richer. Like, is because George Lucas is white, he's not supposed to have a creative staff with people of color that help have input. Like, that was always a weird. I never understood the accusations that George Lucas was racist in his depiction of Jar Jar.
Well, I have two words: Darth Jar Jar. Thoughts, debate. Darth Jar Jar.
Well, I mean, Darth Jar Jar does have the Sith eyes.
Exactly.
And he
I'm not
did
gonna
do
say that
the
it doesn't
flip.
make sense.
And he was the one that gave Palpatine over control.
Yeah,
true.
He was the deciding vote, wasn't he?
I actually like.
He moved. He made the motion.
Oh shit! He did. He did make the motion.
He made the motion.
Yeah, in facing.
I like Darth Jar Jar. I like the idea of Jar Jar better than the idea of Ray Palpatine.
I love Ray Palpatine. It's always got to be Palpatine.
I mean,
I have so many mixed feels, but at the end of the day, I kind of really like her being a nobody, which is where it was going for in the movie before that, it seemed. And I really like that idea because it kind of opened it up to like, oh, actually anybody can be open up the Force to not just be about the big fucking figures, the Skywalkers or the Palpatines, or it could be literally anybody. Just like that kid we saw at the fucking end of Last Jedi that was just sweeping up, like, and we see that the Force is a lot more decentralized in that way.
It was always that way, though. I mean, there was always a lot of younglings out there, and
I think that plays into it a little more. And I also think it would have been cool that, you had the mirrored scenes of her being asked who she was, and not knowing her last name and shit. And then at the end answering, Ray Skywalker or whatever, which, I mean, yes, but also nobody gave her the right to use that name. Like,
I wish she would have said Ray Palpatine and then said, "I am the Senate."
yeah, like that would have been cooler. But honestly, I kind of like the
I am Jar Jar.
I kind of like the idea if she was just a nobody, just how she kind of was just like at the beginning, Ray, just Ray, and seemed very down about it. Have her at the end when she's asked again, have her, answer Ray, but very confidently, just Ray.
Mm-hmm.
Like have her, and that actually really has that expresses a stronger character arc, in my opinion.
I like your sort of decentralized Force thing. When I saw the final of the latest movies, though, my pitch for the ending would have been Palpatine, like OG Palpatine. He's all the Siths, in one body, and then Rey is all the Jedi, and then they kill each other. And then suddenly you're in a Star Wars world that has no Jedi, has no Sith. It has Force users and people like Grey Jedi like Ahsoka and stuff. But like suddenly you are in a world where like there isn't these. It's like a Nietzschean ending where it's like suddenly you're in a world that doesn't have these like strong delineation.
But if the books are not burned, because the books still survive.
Yeah, and so there can be, so there can be like pockets, but like the actual orders themselves that are thousands of years old are like ended. That would have been funny.
And I'm pretty sure Ezra Bridger's still out there somewhere.
Yeah, probably.
All I can think of is Palpatine doing the shitty right wing thing and being like, "My pronouns are the Senate."
Oh my god.
No.
Can we talk about how one of my favorite fucking things when the new trilogy came out, I was really super hype on the fact that it just played so well to the Empire being Nazis and the New Order being the alt-right. Darth Vader was Hitler. He was space Hitler. Space samurai wizard Hitler. And is idolized by this like shitty kid, this shitty fucking incel kid with a stupid haircut and who constantly throws temper tantrums and feels entitled to the Nazi, the legacy of the Nazis, of the white race, of his grandfather and all that, when he has it, when he really isn't up to that level yet. Like he's definitely a scary, intimidating dude. In many ways, the fact that he's not trained makes it, or that he is trained. The fact that he's as erratic as he is makes him even scarier, but he's not as polished as the Nazis were, because they had political power and funding and shit to a higher degree. Whereas the alt-right, like, it is a lot more fringe groups. And yes, that was the biggest fringe group, the New Order, but like they're still more of a fringe group out there trying to take back over, and they're a shadow in many ways of what the Empire was.
And they were
But
all useful
they
idiots for Palpatine.
Yeah, but they compensate by going bigger. A bigger Death Star. We can't be better than them. We'll be bigger than them.
That's the thing. They're so unoriginal that they're like, well, what can we do for our evil plan? Let's build a third Death Star.
That feels like alt-right shit sometimes.
It does.
It's like, oh, what do we want our flag to be? What do we want our 4chan flag to be? Well, the Nazi flag, of course. Like, it's just
they'll never know.
Yeah, like it's so it's wild in many ways, and I don't know. It's the thing that also gets me too is you're exactly right, Eric, with being useful idiots for Palpatine the entire time.
Oh, that was James, I think.
Oh, James, sorry. For being useful idiots for Palpatine the entire time. They're the useful idiots of the more polished remnants of the old Nazi order who came from a time where they had more funding, more power, and were way more centralized, organized, and had their shit together. You're dealing with someone who's on a way more serious level. That's your David Dukes. That's your fucking, old guard who's sitting there engaging with alt-right leaders. Really who's going to influence that message and who's going to fucking take it further at the end of the day is the old guard who already knows how to do that.
This is something I wrote about when it came out. This idea that the First Order is supposed to be a lot more like the alt-right. And one of the points I was trying to make writing about it is the way that you fight these groups is different, right? It's not World War II where we just find the Nazis and kill them. And it's a lot more complicated. And one of the things I was writing about is how we actually see some breakdowns in the resistance, trying to approach this in a very military hierarchy sort of way and running into problems with that because that's not how you defeat an enemy that's on the political fringes themselves and has all of this trying to hide what they're doing and not just coming out and saying it. And so, yeah, I actually ended up writing a little bit about what we can learn about fighting neo-fascism, particularly from looking at Star Wars, at how the First Order is different from the Empire. I think there's a lot of really valuable ground in that comparison.
Hello, this is David Lieberhart. And Jason the Kitty Cat. Please join Crew Day Maine and the Center for Stateless Society for Crew Day Crawl, a week-long anarchist book fair and Mardi Gras festival in St. Tammany County, Louisiana. There'll be live podcasts, music, and a pop drag. So much. Visit our website, crewdaygra.wgf for more information. Thank you. Have a great Mardi Gras.